Hello, fantasy sports fans, and welcome to MFSN's weekly fantasy sports Q&A. My name is Casey Scheinbold. I'll be with you for the next 30 minutes answering any questions you might have. Before we begin, as always, please subscribe to our channel. If you like what you hear, click like, ring the bell for notifications so you can receive all notifications for upcoming videos, and type your comments and questions. This is a chance for me to interact with all of you, so please ask me anything fantasy sports related, and I'll do my best to answer. It is the the beginning of August. Pardon me. I was going to say it's July, but it's August already. The year's going by pretty fast. And August is typically limited to just the dog days of summer for baseball and also football starting up the preseason. But it's actually a great time to be a sports fan because in addition to all that, we have the Olympics right now, which are enjoyable to watch. Basketball, the NBA just had their draft and now it's free agency. So there's been a lot of signs. There's been trades. There's been some big moves in the draft. So there's a lot of sports for the sports viewer to enjoy. And it's all relevant. Well, the Olympics aren't relevant to fantasy, but it's all relevant to fantasy sports. Typically, March is my favorite sports month of the year because of March Madness. I'm a big college basketball fan. But this part of the season with baseball and football, and now the NBA doing some stuff, the Olympics going on. It's a pretty exciting time to be a sports fan. So fantasy sports is what we're talking about today. Today, I guess we'll focus a little bit on everything that's happening. Let's start, I guess, talking fantasy football. Most of you are preparing for your draft. We've been talking a lot on our show about preparing for the draft. We love the draft. The draft in football is a lot more important than the draft in most other sports. The reason I say that is because the basketball season is 82 games long. And so if you have a bad draft, you have 82 games, well, let's say 70 games to 60 games of the regular season of your fantasy season before the playoffs to kind of make up for injuries or errors that you may have made in your draft. With baseball, the season's 162 games long, probably 140 to 145 for fantasy season purposes. Again, that's a lot of time to correct mistakes, make trades, find free agent gems. Football is 16 games. It's 18. Well, I think it's 17 games this year. So it's 18 weeks. That's not a lot of time to make up for mistakes. So it becomes critical to prepare for the draft. It just is. And nailing the draft is how you can set yourself up for success and allow yourself to feel confident going throughout the season. A bad draft, and you can feel by like week 5 or 6 that suddenly, the draft is not going to be, the season's going to be a failure, I should say, or it's going to be a challenge. Football is hard, man. Football is really hard. And the most important thing for you to do is research when it comes to preparing for the draft. That means understanding your league, understanding the scoring settings, understanding the roster size and the bench spots, and then just keeping up with the day-to-day kind of news of the different teams. Right now, everybody's in preseason camps, and you're hearing about injuries and depth charts and who's performing well and who's not performing well. And so pay attention to that stuff. And we will, and you'll be better prepared for the draft. It allows you to better evaluate people, move them up and down your draft board, and select them maybe at a time when somebody else wasn't ready to because they didn't have the same information you had. We have a question about baseball. Story or Bellinger for the rest of the season? Trevor Story of the shortstop for the Colorado Rockies, or Cody Bellinger, the center fielder, right fielder, first baseman, depending on the day, for the Los Angeles Dodgers. Both of them have been pretty terrible, quite honestly. I would probably lean towards Bellinger if I had to pick, not because his numbers warrant it. If I look at both of their numbers, let's see, Story's numbers on the season. He is batting a meager .241 with 13 home runs, but 17 stolen bases. That's pretty helpful. Bellinger, not Trevor Bellinger. Bellinger I don't even think he's batting his weight. He's batting 163 with only 5 home runs and 21 RBIs and 2 stolen bases. Wow. I changed my story. I would take Trevor Story in that deal because Cody Bellinger, I think at this point is just a lost year. Don't get me wrong. He could get hot, but he's had almost 200 at bats because he was injured at the beginning of the year. I think if he was going to figure it out, he probably would have figured it out by now. The reason I was thinking I would lean towards him is A, position flexibility, first base and outfield, and B, he's in a much stronger lineup. He's got, Mookie Betts and Justin Turner and Will Smith and Max Muncy. He's got players all around him. Chris Taylor's having a great year. So the opportunities for RBIs, the opportunities to see pitches to hit would be better. But he's been terrible, and Trevor Story has been terrible for his standards. But one hot month, and he's a 30-30 guy. He might not bat above 260, but if you can get 30 stolen bases and close to 30 home runs, I would do it. Trade proposal. Would I trade Matt Olson for Kevin Gausman? Would I? Well, I guess it depends who my backup first baseman is, because Matt Olson has been tremendous. Matt Olson, I will tip my cap to Ross the Boss on this one, because in the beginning preseason, Ross ranked Matt Olson high in his first baseman. I said nay to that and had him marked down on my board because he's always been a batting average liability, and he got hurt a couple times. But this year, not only is he not hurt, he's got 280. He's got a 280 average, which is crazy to go along with his 28 home runs and 70 RBIs. Kevin Gausman is an excellent pitcher for the San Francisco Giants this year. He's got a 2.35 ERA and a 0.95 WHIP over 126 innings, which is tremendous. San Francisco seems to have figured out the pitching mojo. I think if I had a decent first base backup, I would probably make that trade. If I didn't, and I could have, my team is, my weakness on my roster right now is RBIs. So giving up somebody like Olson wouldn't work for me. But if you can afford to give up the RBIs, the 70 RBIs, then it's worth it. Definitely worth it. But that's tough. It's a redraft league. I think a keeper league, you absolutely keep Olson because I don't trust pitchers as much year to year. But in a redraft league, I think you can trust Gausman at this point. Who are my top 10 running backs? My top 10 running backs are pretty consistent with what most quote unquote experts are saying. McCaffrey is your number one running back, as much as he's an injury risk. And I probably would rather not have the first pick because I don't want to feel that pressure of drafting Christian McCaffrey. He's number one. Then I would have Derrick Henry. Then I would have Dalvin Cook. Then I would have Nick Chubb. After that, I would probably then go Alvin Kamara. Now that Aaron Rodgers is back in Green Bay, I would go with Aaron Jones probably as my next one. Then Zeke. Then Saquon Barkley. Is that 9 or 10? I think that's 10. But if not, who would I also put in there? Maybe Jonathan Taylor if I needed a 10th one. I expect big things from him, although Quentin Nelson, the stud guard, if you've been following the news, he and Carson Wentz are both having the same foot surgery issue, which is going to knock them out for several games into the regular season. That's going to hurt Indianapolis tremendously, but I still think Jonathan Taylor is talented enough. Somebody who I think could sneak into my top 10 is Joe Mixon. I think he's going to have a lot of opportunity this year in Cincinnati. They got rid of Giovanni Bernard, and so he could get 20 to 23 touches a game. They now have Jamar Chase to go with Boyd and T. Higgins on the outside. If Joe Burrow is healthy, that's a pretty dynamic offense. Could allow for some big holes for Joe Mixon, and Joe Mixon can catch the ball out of the backfield. So he's certainly on the outside looking in, but not very far on the outside. He could actually end up top 5 if things break right for him. Is Saquon Barkley still a first-round pick? I don't think he is. I'm a Giants fan, which is painful. I'm also a Penn State fan, and so Saquon Barkley was like a dream come true when the Giants drafted him for me in that draft a few years ago. But he's been hurt the last 3 years. I think each year he's missed some games. Last year he missed all but 2, and the year before that he missed 6 or 7 with a high ankle sprain. I just don't think you can trust him enough to stay healthy to make him a first-round pick, which is a shame because he was very healthy in college. And he's got all the tools necessary to be a workhorse running back, except for health at this point. Oh, man, I'm getting picked on. Daniel Jones, is he a bust yet? I think this is the year we make that determination. The Giants their whole offensive line was atrocious last year. They didn't have wide receivers. They brought in Kenny Galladay. They drafted Kadarius Toney. They have Saquon Barkley back. They still have Sterling Shepard and Darius Slayton. You throw Evan Ingram at tight end, and Daniel Jones is not without weapons. This is going to be the biggest year for him. If he can produce, if he can get the Giants to the playoffs, or at least make them a realistic kind of threat for the playoffs, I think you don't cut bait. However, if he struggles, I could see him being labeled a bust pretty quickly, which will likely cost Dave Gettleman, the GM, his job, because Gettleman drafted him really high when the Giants had the 6th and 14th pick. He used the 6th pick on Daniel Jones. So I don't know if he's a bust yet, but this will be the year we find out. Will Trey Lance be starting soon in San Francisco? I think if I was in a dynasty league and drafting for the first time, I would draft Trey Lance over Jimmy Garoppolo. In a redraft league, if I drafted one, I would make sure I had both. Trey Lance was a high pick obviously a top 3 pick, I think, for the 49ers. Kyle Shanahan loves him. So chances are he's going to see the field at some point. I don't know if he starts from day one, but he's one of those dual option quarterbacks with a rocket arm. And if he can figure out the offense quick enough, he's talented enough, I think, to start. And from what I've read, San Francisco thinks he's been doing a pretty darn good job in training camp. So who the heck knows? I don't know if Shanahan's made a call the way Belichick already labeled Cam Newton as starter. I don't know if Shanahan's done the same thing with Garoppolo or not. So you have first pick in the draft. Who do you pick? Well, it depends, obviously, on the type of draft. If the type of league, if it's a super flex league, I think you take Patrick Mahomes with the first pick because you're going to be playing 2 quarterbacks. If you can get Mahomes, you're in great shape. If it is a regular flex league, I think you have to lean McCaffrey or Derrick Henry or Dalvin Cook. I think you take one of those bell cow running backs, because they're going to get the most touches if they stay healthy. They're going to produce the numbers for you week in and week out. And early in the draft, in fantasy drafts, you want to take consistency and predictability for your stars. You don't want to take the lottery picks. You don't want to take, I think this guy, Saquon Barkley, if he's healthy, is going to be great. If you have to say if, you're in trouble. So I would take that one. Is Dr. Dan Ratner overrated as a fantasy football player? No, actually, Dr. Dan Ratner is underrated at times. He underrates himself as a fantasy football player. I'll say that. I think he certainly improved a lot in the last year. I think MFSN can take the credit for that, all the work he's done and the information we've passed on to him. We'll see this year. It's going to be the first draft he goes into with all the right tools. And if he nails the draft, then I don't think he's overrated. If he screws up the draft, then we can say last year was an anomaly and he got lucky. So I'll answer that question in December. I did say Mixon. If you heard me, I said he has the potential to be a top 5 in the running back echelon, a first tier running back. if he because I think Cincinnati is one of the most improved offenses on in the NFL right now, and Mixon is certainly a part of that, especially without Giovanni trying to take any touches from him. Is the AFC East the best conference in football? Ooh, let's see. Well, we know what Buffalo is capable of. The Jets, I don't think quite honestly can make any claims about being all that good right now. So we're not going to say them. Who else could we list in there that's really good? All right, let's look at the standings from last year to see where everybody was. Miami, no. I don't. You think the AFC East is the best? I think the AFC East might be one of the weaker divisions. I think the Bills should run away with it. The Patriots are kind of rebuilding. The Jets are throwing Zach Wilson out there, a rookie starting quarterback, and are not well built to be a contender. The Miami Dolphins, we'll see. I think they're improved. I think they added some weapons for Tua, getting him Waddle and Fuller. I like Gesicki at tight end as a purely pass-catching tight end. So they might surprise, but I think the Bills by far are the best team in that, and I don't think anything comes close. I think the AFC North is a very strong division. I think the Browns have proven they're good this year, last year. The Ravens might be the best team in the AFC. We don't know. The Steelers are always solid, and the Bengals, as we all know, are one of the most improved teams, so they could surprise. So I certainly believe that the AFC North is stronger than the AFC East. How about the South? You got the Titans. Like I said, they, in my opinion, have the best skill set position group of maybe any team when you added Julio Jones to that team. I mean, to go with Derrick Henry, to go with A.J. Brown, Tannehill proved he's a legit quarterback, I think, last year when he's given the opportunity. I'm not sure off the top of my head who they're starting at tight end, but that's a pretty impressive group, and their defense has always been strong. The Colts, as we said, are dealing with the injuries to Wentz. I think they have Nelson's hurt. Jonathan Taylor's a great running back. I don't know. They could surprise. They had a good defense last year. The Jacksonville Jaguars are absolutely in rebuild mode, and they're going to have a lot of young players starting. The AFC West could be strong. I would say if I'm ranking the divisions in the AFC, I would go North first, then West, then East, then South. So no, I don't think the AFC East is that strong. Lamar Jackson, an upper echelon QB. I would say he's top 5, top 4. I think he has the potential if he uses his legs as much as he normally does. But I always worry about his health. A running quarterback can get crushed. Robert Griffin III was an absolute monster his first year starting in Washington. Then he started taking hits. Lamar Jackson has outlasted so far, and he's a good quarterback. We'll see. He has Hollywood Brown, and his running back, J.K. Dobbins, is very good. He's got Edwards at tight end. So he's got a lot of weapons. So he can be a top percentage quarterback. Is it good to draft Travis Kelce in the first round? Well, I have disagreed with my cohorts on this topic because I don't believe any tight end is worth drafting in the first round. I do believe Kelce is the absolute best tight end in fantasy sports. I don't think it's terribly close. However, where I disagree from Ross and Dan is I think that George Kittle and Darren Waller are all, and Mark Andrews, not Edwards, to correct myself from before, by the way, that I think George Kittle and Darren Waller are also very, very good tight ends. And I don't think Kelce's exceptionally better than them or significantly better than them to justify drafting a tight end in the first round if the next two aren't going to go until the third or fourth round. So I would say no to that, to drafting him. My top three wide receivers are pretty simple. It's with Aaron Rodgers back. It's Tyreek Hill. It's Davante Adams. It's Stephon Diggs. I don't think there's too much of an argument there. They're in my top tier. Some could argue DeAndre Hopkins, and I certainly would accept that as a legitimate one. But Kyler Murray was terrible the second half of last year, and I think that hurts Hopkins a little bit. The only one who could sneak in there, I think, is DK Metcalf, because I think Russell Wilson is a top 5 quarterback, and DK Metcalf has proven that he is a athletic monster on the outside, both with speed, strength, and catch range. So those would be the ones I would all put in that top 3 mix. But right off the top of my head, it would be Hill, Davante Adams, and Stephon Diggs. Who's faster, Bolt or Hill? I'm assuming you mean Tyreek Hill or Usain Bolt. Well, Usain Bolt, I think, is pretty old now. And by old, I mean for sprinters years. He's probably in his mid to late 30s. He set those world records, I think, back in 2009. And so that was 12 years ago. If he was in his mid 20s then, he's probably in his later 30s. And so I would give Hill the nod there just because of age. But Usain Bolt has crazy long strides, and Tyreek Hill seems a little short. And Usain Bolt certainly knows how to run. So it would be a good race. But if I had to bet, I'd do that. Can the Arizona Cardinals, I'm assuming you're referring to, not the St. Louis Cardinals, make the playoffs this year? In the NFC West, let's see. So they're going to have to play the Rams twice, the 49ers twice, and the Seahawks twice. That's a tough one. I think they have the roster. I think if Kyler Murray plays the way he did the first half of the season, I absolutely think they can. If he can put it together for a full season, unless you have a 2001 Baltimore Ravens defense, you rarely get far in the season with a serviceable quarterback as opposed to an elite quarterback. And so if he can perform the way he did in the first half of the season, he's an elite quarterback. He's an elite fantasy quarterback, and the Cardinals can make the playoffs. Yes, if he doesn't, I don't believe they will. Is Chubb still a first-round pick? Does Kareem Hunt make me nervous? I think Nick Chubb is a top 4 running back. So I think he's right after those first 3 of McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and Derrick Henry. I would put Chubb right there. I think he's that good. Kareem Hunt doesn't make me that nervous because the Browns are a pretty committed run team. If they run the ball 36 times a game, 38 times a game, I think he'll still get close to 20 touches. And with that, he's going to get you 100 yards and a touchdown pretty regularly. So I think Nick Chubb is dynamic enough to still be a first-round pick. Superflex league is code for a 2-quarterback league. That's true. I apologize. I might not have explained that. When Ross asked about who would I take with the first pick, I said if it's a superflex. Superflex means in your flex position, you can put a quarterback in there. So most experienced or successful fantasy players will want to play 2 quarterbacks week in and week out. So the value of quarterbacks in the draft skyrockets in those leagues because you'll see 4 or 5 quarterbacks go in the first round. And so it becomes super important to prioritize quarterbacks in a super flex. Aaron Rodgers MVP. Wow. It depends on how the Packers do. If the Packers make a run through the playoffs, then yes. If they dominate the NFC North, yes. I mean, they should make the playoffs. The Lions and the Bears shouldn't compete too hard with them. It's going to come down to them and the Vikings. And Aaron Rodgers is a better quarterback than Kirk Cousins, so they should win that division, which means they'll make the playoffs. Is he? I don't know if he is going to win the MVP. There's so many good quarterbacks in the league. I mean, obviously Patrick Mahomes is always going to give him a run for the MVP. I think last year, had Dak Prescott stayed healthy, he would have been in the running. So he's kind of developed into an elite quarterback. You could say Tom Brady has a chance to be MVP as well. If we're looking just at quarterbacks, then you're looking at running backs. If McCaffrey can stay healthy all year, he has a chance to do it. Derrick Henry, Dalvin Cook, all of those top players have a shot. So I would, if I'm betting Aaron Rodgers versus the field, I'm taking the field, but Aaron Rodgers is certainly probably a top 5 or 6 percentage-wise bet to win that MVP. Do you think it's a good strategy to draft 2 running backs in the first 2 rounds? I think in regular flex leagues, yes. I do think it's a good strategy. I don't think you have to be wed to that strategy. I wouldn't force a running back selection in the second round if there's not one that's second round value left. But if you can get 2 workhorse backs who are going to play week in and week out and get touches and get goal line touches, and if they can catch the ball too, you can't pass that up in the first 2 rounds of a draft. Wide receivers have become much more important in the NFL in recent years as some of the rules have changed to allow more freedom in the passing game and more scoring in the game itself. So wide receivers have increasing value. I mean, certainly we talked about the top 3 to 5 wide receivers could sneak in there. And then in quarterbacks, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, so Aaron Rodgers, those guys can sneak into those first 2 rounds too. But if you can get if you can get 2 good running backs, I don't think you pass that up. Who's the starting quarterback in New Orleans? I'm not sure. I don't think. Let me check the latest news here. Let's see. I don't see any announcements from Sean Payton. I think it should be Jameis Winston, but I'm not an expert at evaluating NFL quarterbacks. Taysom Hill did pretty well when he played last year, and so I'm assuming he's coming in with the job, but who the heck knows? At this point, I would probably, if I'm drafting now, I would avoid drafting a quarterback out of New Orleans until I knew more. But it could be either. Michael Thomas, who is an immensely talented wide receiver, his value has taken a tremendous hit because of the uncertainty in fantasy. Who is any quarterback worth taking in the first round in a 12-team league? Again, I think Patrick Mahomes is worth taking in the first round no matter what. Josh Allen, maybe I'd rather see him do it for one more year before I'd say he's worth taking. But I love that Josh Allen gets the goal line carries for his team. If they have the ball in the red zone, certainly from inside the 3-yard line, it's a pretty safe bet that Josh Allen is going to get a chance to carry it into the end zone, and that just increases his value tremendously. Joey Votto has been crazy. Okay, question from Chris Atwater. How much will COVID vaccinations and players against them impact fantasy drafts in the season? I wish, Chris, I think that's the question we all have to answer. I don't know. Obviously that's all the debate. You see it every day in the news about players saying they don't want to be vaccinated, owners complaining about the vaccination rates of their players, other players complaining about unvaccinated players. I think, we had this issue in fantasy basketball this past year with all the COVID stuff and how do you make adjustments for it in season for your team? I think you allow for increased waiver wire use to make up if your player gets COVID or gets benched because of COVID. You certainly have to look at those top 20 to 30 picks and see how if there's any news about them and adjust accordingly. It's, I am not going to take into consideration in my draft COVID because I don't think what I would do in terms of the adjustments I may make based on news, unless I hear that running back A from this team, who's a top 10 running back, has insisted he will not get vaccinated and is not afraid to go out and party and stuff like that. Like something like that might worry me about taking them. But short of that, I'm going to draft as if it's not a thing, just because I don't know, and I'm not smart enough to figure out a way to change my valuation, my valuing of the players in order to adjust my draft board. Let's see. Deshaun Ross, you'd like to set me up. Michael Thomas is out for the first 7 weeks. Do you still draft him? Yeah, I think you draft him at the end of the draft, and you stash him on your IR because, like I said, he's still that talented. And if when he comes back in week 8, he's going to be more rested and fresh compared to everybody else. And so he might have a little extra burst. If I can get a half season of Michael Thomas out of my 14th round pick or 15th round pick, I'm going to take a half season of Michael Thomas. He's just too talented of a player to not do that. Hopkins says he isn't getting the vaccine. Does that affect his draft position? Yeah, like I said earlier, if somebody has anti-vaccine and anti-safety measures related to that, because these guys are traveling for games, they're staying in hotels, they are going to stadiums full of people because people are allowed back in stadiums. I don't know if it necessarily drops them out of the top 6 or 7 wide receivers, but I think if you're deciding between DeAndre Hopkins and DK Metcalf and you have them both graded the same, and Metcalf is already vaccinated or isn't opposed to the vaccination, and Hopkins says, don't vaccinate me, I'm probably going to take Metcalf. But if it's between him and Brashard Perryman of the Detroit Lions, I'm still going to take Hopkins because I would rather get what I can out of Hopkins. I think he's still more valuable in 10 weeks than Perryman is in 16 or 17. I don't know. You'd have to ask Mr. Atwater that question about his alcohol consumption. Will the Cowboys win their division? I believe, as much as it pains me to say this as a Giants fan, I do think they're the best team in the division. Their offense is insane. I think despite Ezekiel Elliott's bad year for him last year, he's still one of the best running backs in the league. Dak Prescott was the best quarterback or one of the best quarterbacks in football prior to getting hurt last year. You got Michael Gallup, you got CeeDee Lamb, you got Amari Cooper, you got Blake Jarwin. That's a pretty impressive offense. Defensively, they're not as strong, but they drafted some defensive players. So I hope, that'll make a positive impact. Micah Parsons is a stud out of Penn State. He's going to be their new linebacker. I think he can help. They have Van Der Esch. They have some really quality players on that defense too. Their secondary was a little suspect, but if you can put up 42 points a game, your secondary can be suspect. And you're looking at the rest of the NFC East. The Giants aren't that impressive yet. I hope they are. The Eagles, Jalen Hurts is going to be their new starting quarterback unless the Deshaun Watson thing happens. They drafted Devontae Smith. I like Miles Sanders. They're a pretty good team, but I don't know if I would trust Jalen Hurts for a full season. And then you got the Washington football team, led by Fitzmagic. Defensively, I think the Redskins have the best defense in the NFC East, maybe in the NFC. I'm not sure. The Rams and some other teams would certainly have a claim to that. But offensively, I'm not sure what you can get. You have Antonio Gibson, I think, is your starting running back, who's good. I don't know if he's great though. I like Scary Terry McLaurin. I think he's super fast, but he's a smaller wide receiver. I don't know if he's a true number one or not. We'll see. Tyreek Hill has certainly proven that if you're that Steve Smith type of receiver, you can make up with your size with toughness and everything else. CeeDee Lamb, the number one wide receiver in Dallas. I believe so. I know some people like Amari Cooper, and he's an Alabama guy and has been a really good receiver, but I think CeeDee Lamb is crazy talented, and I think he's going to take that number one role this year. Depends on who Dak Prescott develops the best chemistry with. I haven't been following that closely because I haven't seen any updates there. So we just have a few minutes left, so why don't I take just a couple questions. Does Tennessee have a chance to win the AFC? I do believe they have a chance to win the AFC. I mean, we've talked about their offense with A.J. Brown and Julio Jones and Derrick Henry, and their offensive line was good last year. Tannehill has proven to be a good quarterback when you surround him with talent. Their defense is always strong. I think they can, but the AFC is tough. You're talking the Bills, you're talking the Ravens, you're talking the Chiefs. Those are some really strong teams. That doesn't count the Browns, who made the AFC Championship last year. So, Christopher Atwater did not confirm nor deny his alcohol consumption at Dr. Ratner's wedding. I was at that wedding as well, but I didn't know Christopher at that time, so I can't speak for that. All right, last question. Will my Brewers offense ever score enough to win the World Series? Oh, that's an excellent question. I'm a huge fan of the Brewers. I think when you have, Woodruff and Corbin at the top of that rotation, and you have Hader and Williams in the back end of the bullpen, you're going to be in every game. If maybe Yelich needed to get COVID to get his mind right, I'm hoping for his sake, because I own him in a keeper league. When he's right, he's one of the most dynamic offensive players. I think Eduardo Escobar was a great sign for them. He's going to produce some pop in the middle of that lineup. Then he can play second or third base for you. Obviously, Willy Adames has been like a gold mine for the Brewers since he came over from Tampa Bay. That's a fun offense to watch in that respect. They run the bases. Keston Hiura really hurt them. Colton Wong is in and out. He's not always that healthy. Omar Narvaez has been pretty good. So I do think the Brewers are going to run away with the division. And fast Freddie Peralta. I don't want to diminish fastball Freddie. He's been awesome this year in that rotation too. It's going to be fun to watch. I know that much. They are a fun team. It depends who they play in that first round. But if they get hot at the right time, if Yelich is right, that whole offense is right. So, Chris, I think you got to watch that. All right. So, everybody, thank you for tuning in. This was fun to talk both baseball and football. I'm super excited that football is back. It'll be a fun football season, regardless of how my draft goes, but I'm hoping my draft goes well. I'm wishing everybody out there the best of luck in their fantasy leagues. As always, subscribe to our channel, ring the bell for notifications, click like if you like what you've seen or heard, and leave any comments you can. I love talking sports with anybody. So please, please, please keep in touch with us. Have a good night, everybody.
As a reward for making Gilcliff the undisputed clean energy drink of America and beyond, we've packed in more B vitamins, electrolytes, and killer taste than ever. And as a bonus, we've made the ultimate loyalty program. It's not a Coke, it's not a club, it's the Gilcliff Coke Club. Tap into special offers like flash sales and exclusive merch, deep discounts, and eternal awesomeness. Go to Gilcliff.com to get your discount.